Welcome to Coach's Corner. I'm Justin Scollard.
I'm Ethan Wolf.
And today we're going to be digging into a topic that I hope we get some people to comment on. Basically, how far should we listen to doctors? How much of their nutrition advice, their pain management advice, their preventative maintenance advice or education, I should say, should we listen to, and should it be the go-to whenever we experience any sort of issues that aren't directly related to like being ill or having a broken bone or whatever? And I guess I just want to preface this by saying we're not like trying to be like, don't trust your doctors and, walk it off, punk. Like, it's not like that, but I do think that we tend to assume that they are the end-all be-all for all things healing.
I agree.
And maybe not always the case.
There's a certain dogmatic authority that doctors seem to have. People just will listen to doctors as if they are the holy grail of advice for all things.
Would you call it a dogmatic?
Dogmatic?
Dogmatic.
It's dogmatic.
This is beyond dogmatic.
It's dogmatic. There's something about that white coat.
It really is. And I think that medical school is this thing that we idolize. We all, maybe in the back of our mind, wonder if we have what it takes to do it. And people who have done it and gone through the 10 years or whatever of study, it's so admirable. Like 100% can't deny that dedication and just ability to persevere through really, really rigorous study for so long, for so little reward. Even when you finish, you got to go and get a specialization, or you got to be a resident for a while. It just takes so long before you can actually even start making an income as a doctor. And so hats off to anybody who's done that, no doubt about it. I think, though, that like anything in life, if you kind of keep it this mystical thing and you don't actually see it for what it is, we can tend to just assume that they're somehow superhuman. But then when you actually look at the curriculum of medical school, it's interesting because you're like, oh, okay. It's so focused on internal medicine, obviously, and prescription-based and being able to diagnose.
Which is all very important. There are no questions asked, a time and a place for the skill sets that they learn. And, doctors have saved me many times.
No offense, Ethan, but if I break a leg, I'm not going to call you,
a couple of sticks and a handkerchief, I'll splint that puppy right up.
Hey, you know what? And like, by the way, I got a really great first aid book right here that I did like a really extensive first aid certification when I was like 19. I learned it was like that, like how to like quickly pull a tourniquet out and how to quickly set a bone or like whatever you needed to do if it was like an emergency situation, like someone's like hemorrhaging out in front of you. You don't want to just call 911 and watch them bleed out. You got to do something.
Yep.
So it was a really crazy cert, just like, but still, obviously, that would almost be analogous to the extent that of nutrition that doctors learn in med school would be like me taking you and I are taking like a first aid kit.
Yeah, first aid cert.
There's probably like a healthy analogy first aid there.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're here to focus on in terms of the is a doctor a good place to go? Kind of the lifestyle choices and the things that might be looked at as more preventative or just certain aspects like pain management or thing. And is a doctor going to always have the best outcome or have the resources to help you make the best choices?
If you ask a barber if you need a haircut, what are they going to tell you?
Of course, yeah.
Probably do, right? And I think that you have to just think about who you're asking for the advice. It's easy to just want to go right to a doctor. I think, okay, so let me back up a little bit. So like Ethan and I went to massage school together 12 years ago.
At least, yeah.
And we learned a lot. We learned a lot about the body. We learned a lot about how to help someone recover from injury. We learned about like the pathology of injury and a lot of these things. And what you realize really quickly is that if you've gone through that kind of study, and it was like a 150-hour course, which isn't crazy, but it was beefy. It was tough.
It was,
150 hours of focusing on that side of healing. And then, you have a friend say, oh man, I threw my back out. I'm going to go see my doctor. To the normal person, that seems like a really reasonable thing to say and to do. Like, okay, you threw your back out, you should go see your doctor. Then when you look at it from this angle, where it's like we spent a lot of time working in a physical therapy clinic doing like a lot of the protocol for injury, and then we went to massage school. So when you look at it from that angle, you go, well, what are they going to tell you? You know, like,
Yeah, like
take some ibuprofen and relax and
yeah,
rest.
ibuprofen.
Stay off of it.
Yeah. Maybe a pain med if it's that bad, you know, like an actual.
Or they'll refer you to a specialist.
Yep. That'd be the other thing is like maybe they'll refer you to some PT, which is not going to be a bad thing. But other than that, it might be like an orthopedic surgeon. Depends on
you got on the rabbit hole real quick.
Depends on what kind of pain and ailment you're having, but absolutely.
And so it can go into this rabbit hole of symptom-based treatment where it's like you're just loading up on ibuprofen or pain meds, and you're just kind of going from one specialty to the other. X-rays might not show anything because if it's just soft tissue, if you just like have some stiffness and
Maybe it's just
a trigger point
spasm,
issue, a spasm, like what's an X-ray going to show, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be really confusing where if you had a good trainer or massage therapist, it's like right away, you know exactly what's going on. You're stiff, you probably bent over and rounded your spine or whatever, twisted when you leaned over and it like pulled out your QL or whatever. And it's actually, there's pretty straightforward process that we can go through to fix it. But those are just some of the little things that with a little awareness and some lifestyle modifications, you realize that maybe we can refrain from defaulting and deferring to a doctor for everything that goes wrong with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the thing is like the complete umbrella of going to the doctor. Because if you've dislocated your shoulder and you want to get an MRI and see, and like, do you need surgery? That's the route for the doctor, no doubt. But I think if it's just, I threw my back out in a kind of a sense, you had a client that threw his back out and like went to the doctor, and it was to me, and I was just like, well, let's, you know, do this, do that. And just my words were no longer of any value because the pain, and it was pretty bad. He threw it out pretty bad, but you know, the MD was the only answer. He was like immediately went to the doctor. And I think that, yeah, they didn't even refer him to PT. They just gave him some pain meds and told him to stay off of it, and which, you know,
classic, sure,
kind of is what it is. So.
Yeah, and I think it's just where you go through preventative care and you go, okay, most common tweaks and injuries and sprains, barring of sort of any acute situation that are more like, okay, this is something that's been building over time, or you are just stiff and then that stiffness eventually leads to a strain, or you're just weak and you don't know how to move your body very well and you recruit the wrong muscle and you have like a bunch of like compensation happening. You know, you need to probably work with somebody, I think, who has studied that specifically and that can probably help you create some sort of a protocol to build you back up. And it's so empowering when you do that, because then you realize just like, oh, this is just a symptom of a greater issue. I think that's the biggest takeaway is when you do get injured in that, if you do, let's say you're exercising or you're just moving around the house or you just lean over to pick a kid up or a dog or groceries or like whatever, and you feel that little twinge like, oh, right? That's just the symptom of an underlying cause that's been brewing for a long time.
It was just the straw that broke the camel.
That was just the little tip of the iceberg of finally now it's gotten to a point where you're noticing it, but it's been brewing for a while.
Yeah.
And this is just where like that lifestyle modification, understanding your body better, moving, developing strength and range of motion and mobility, and change the trajectory of any potential for those kind of injuries. And then when you do get them, because sometimes if you're exercising, the occasional tweak is inevitable.
It is.
But when you do get it, you understand why and how, and then it's very easy to kind of reverse engineer it so you can heal yourself up pretty quickly. And I don't know, it just gives you like a sense of autonomy. Like you have ownership, you have control over your own body.
Yeah.
And it's not just this like, 1970s coal miner, oh, I threw my back out, like it's all over now, It's just like, once it's gone, you threw it out, there's no getting it back, It's like that old school kind of thinking that there's nothing we can do about it, it's over.
I mean, literally this morning, I was training a couple, and she came in, and she's like, oh, I just want you to know, I threw my back out, lifting up our very heavy cat. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I started to move her through some just active range of motion and some soft stretching and that kind of thing. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, will this help? And I'm like, absolutely. Showed her how to do some self-massage with a ball and was, kind of had a conversation at the end of like, it's important to keep introducing movement. Your back is in spasm. It doesn't want to move. That's why it hurts to move, but you kind of got to coax it back. And it's just interesting because it's like the exact thing we're talking about versus, I don't think ibuprofen might help, but it's not necessarily going to actually repair. It'll mask the pain. It'll be anti-inflammatory in that capacity, but there is a protocol that will help you that much more if you choose to participate with it. And so a little bit of knowledge is power for sure. And I think it's very empowering when you have those kind of tools.
And that's, I think, when you look at physical therapy as a field of study, it's really interesting because I'll watch some YouTube videos on some physical therapists. I mean, like fresh out of surgery, they have you grinding.
Yeah.
Like if you're an athlete, for example, and you break your hand, or you break your ankle, or you tear your Achilles or something like that.
ACL.
Yeah. I mean, you get like a week. And then like you're in there, if it's like, hey, we got to get him ready for next season or her ready for next season. They're like having you grind and grip and squeeze. And it's like there's no rest because what you realize is we heal through movement. And your body is constantly detecting signals of, hey, are we still using this part or not? And if we're not, then it's the law of use it or lose it, which is like the first thing you learn as a personal trainer. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And we hear that in the context of muscle, but it pretty much goes for everything in our body, right?
Absolutely. And all the tissues need something to adapt to. And if you just go through surgery and the ligaments and the tissues in your knee are tight and have limited range of motion and you don't force them into more range of motion, they're not going to lengthen, and then you're going to have permanent limited range of motion. I mean, I remember when I was doing an internship at a physical therapy office when I got out of school, there was a woman who had some type of knee surgery, some type of ligament. I forget which one it was, but they had her on a bike. And they were basically putting the seat more and more forward on the bike to have her knee bend more and more as she goes through the pedaling.
Right.
And basically, the PT was like, as much pain as you're willing to take, the better it'll be.
Which is so counterintuitive,
yes.
Because we look at pain as something to be avoid.
Right, and it is. Your body's trying to give you a signal, but in that case, if she never went through the pain to bend her knee deeper, she would be sitting there with a limited range of motion in her knee, which would probably cause much more angst or agony down the road.
Right.
She was like in tears because she was a tough cookie, and she was like, "Let's go." But the more she was willing to do it, the faster. And it was just a very interesting thing to witness of like the tears and the amount of pain that she was feeling is actually a faster process of healing. And I think it's like that when we back to the throwing your back out, the instinct is to not move it. It hurts to move it. So you just want to not move at all, but then that creates more stiffness. And so I think it's just, and there's so much knowledge out there. YouTube is such an amazing resource. And there's plenty, you can start to empower yourself with resources that are available because of the internet.
And it's like, okay, so in that scenario, I think that makes sense, right? The woman had to have knee surgery, and then there's prescribed physical therapy after the surgery. And then in that controlled environment where she's being supervised, she was pushed to her limits. And that all makes sense. And I think then now, how do we extrapolate that down to everyday life where maybe we tweak our knee, or we roll an ankle, or we tweak our back, or we throw our neck out, just going through the day-to-day routine of life, instead of going straight to a doctor and perhaps getting prescribed physical therapy, perhaps just getting prescribed anti-inflammatories, how do we then have autonomy and control and empower ourselves to be able to like navigate through those types of injuries where maybe we're not supervised by a physical therapist,
right?
But just understanding that like it only varies by degree, and injury is a continuum, not a binary. Yeah. And just because this person here was out of surgery and had to go through that kind of rehab, we can extrapolate that, okay, well, maybe I just tweaked my hip or I tweaked my back, but the lesson, the takeaway is that we heal through movement, and we heal through going towards the pain instead of shying away from it and covering it up with anti-inflammatories and just and avoiding engaging with that area.
Yeah, and avoiding participation.
Having that awareness, understanding mobility, trusting that barring any sort of like broken bone or torn muscle, going through proper range of motion, if your back's hurting or you're stiff, that's actually healing, and that can actually help get you to your recovery much faster.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another interesting thing too is nutrition.
Yep.
With doctors, and I obviously own a nutrition company. I've been a trainer. We went to massage school together, and now this chapter of my career is mainly focused around nutrition and weight loss. And so it's just interesting because let me just throw a couple interesting statistics that I found at you. Okay. Yep. So definitivehealth.com analyzed 850,000 doctors.
It's a lot.
Analyzed them all. And they found that the average age right now in 2024 is 54 years old. Wow. So the average doctor is 54 years old. So what does that tell us? It tells us that that person probably was in med school in the late 90s and early aughts, right? So totally, 25 years ago or so they were in med school. Well, it turns out that besides like the 1950s and 1960s when there was a bigger, or excuse the 1930s and 40s when there was a initial push for more nutrition education in med school, after the 1960s it was kind of moved to what they would call low priority. And as of today, the average time spent studying nutrition in med school is 19 hours. And that's a quote from the Journal of American Medical Association, which is a peer-reviewed journal. Yeah. So they're only basically taking what let's just put it this way, any person could learn as much as their doctor knows about nutrition in a long weekend. Yeah. Which is essentially just the fundamentals. It's just the basic calories and proteins, carbs, and fats.
And what any probably training certification or.
To put it in perspective, precision nutrition, which is a certification that I find to be the most complete. So there's you can get a nutrition certification. There's many places that offer it. When I hire nutrition coaches to come work for me, I want to see a level 1 at least, level 2 is better, precision nutrition. It's just a really solid, very practical, well-rounded behavioral elements of it. It's the whole picture. They really take everything into consideration, calories, but the person's life. Anyways, they're level holistic. 1, very holistic, but also very practical and scientific at the same time.
Of course, yeah.
Their level 1 certification is 80 hours.
It's 80.
80.
4 times as much.
4x, right? And that's the level 1. You can go up to level 4, I think, with them, or level 3, level 4. So you could potentially have you could probably have 240 hours of specific nutrition studying just as having certifications, not even like an advanced degree. So whatever, listen, it's not about like trying to shit on doctors or anything. It's just like understanding who you're talking to. I think that's what we were trying to get at the beginning of the episode. It's like, who are you asking advice from?
Right. There's a time and a place for a doctor.
Totally.
It's not like we're just saying don't go to them. But I think there also is a component that if you were looking to lose weight or make lifestyle changes in regards to weight loss and eating differently, the doctor probably isn't the best authority.
If you're asking a 54-year-old man who studied 20 hours of nutrition 25 years ago what you should be doing, how much stock do you want to put in that response?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I think doctors also, they get paid to do surgeries and that kind of a thing. And, it's like if somebody comes in and they're overweight and they say, I want a lap band surgery or like a stomach reduction surgery, I would always be curious how much conversation is there about like, well, have you tried this? Maybe you should do this versus just like, all right, well, let's just do a major surgery that permanently alters the size of your stomach that you can't return from.
I know that they have to show initiative, the patient does. Okay. So before you can get any sort of like, gastric bypass or lap band, they make you do like 8 to 12 weeks or something like that of nutrition exercise. You have to show that you are trying. Show me that you can lose 10 pounds through eating better and exercise before you can qualify. So there is guardrails. They don't just
slap it around.
Yeah, like prescribe it to anybody. But it's also they're not going to deny you either, because that is how they get paid. So there's a conflict of interest, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's
if
kind of
everything was preventative and everyone studied these like specific forms of medicine, but then we focus everything on preventative, there is an odd conflict of interest there, right?
Yeah, well, because it kind of almost goes back into like the Ozempic and like testosterone replacement therapy.
Right.
Of like, I know men on testosterone replacement therapy that like, sure, they're probably benefiting from it, but do they really need it at the age that they are? Or like, did they have to really jump through hoops, or the doctor's like, okay, like, here you go.
Oh, you can get prescribed steroids. What doctor is going to be like, you know what you need? Anabolic steroids. That's what you need. But you can get prescribed Anavar, which is one of the more popular anabolic steroids in like the bodybuilding world. You know what I mean? So it's like you do need a doctor to get prescribed these things, but they're being prescribed like crazy. And there's actually specific clinics that are being set up to prescribe people these things.
Yeah.
So it's like opportunists coming in here and being like, yeah, you want that?
Yeah, that's all right. Let's check you out. Oh, your testosterone is on the lower end of things.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I mean, there's been doctors prescribing opioids and drugs and painkillers for dozens of years,
Yeah. And I think it's just those are the kind of like the tricky gray areas that even like statins, I feel like statins are one of those things that get thrown around quite a bit. And I think, again, there is a time and a place for them. I'm sure that they help people quite a bit that really qualify for it. But at the same time, I think you could probably do some dietary changes to help affect your cholesterol. But I know people that aren't even like out of the range. Like if you have a range and it's on like the higher end of the range, you're not even like over the limit. They want to prescribe you a statin. You think even my mom was in that boat where they're like, oh, your cholesterol's on a little bit of a higher end. Let's just get you on some statins. And it's like, it's like, because one of the things that statins has such a cascade of side effects. The potential of the side effects from them are so extreme. And that can often lead to having to take other medications to that whole bandwagon of like, oh, here's a side effect from the statin, and let's put this other medication. And so I think it's just one of those things that, there's that gray area of, is a pill going to be the best choice for the situation at hand? Or could lifestyle choices like exercising, sleeping differently, and eating differently get you there?
That's hard.
I know, it is hard. And I think the thing is that people blindly accept what their doctor says so much. And I think that's kind of one of the things, is that there is this aura of, yes, whatever you say around doctors, the white coat oracle. And so it's like, oh, look, not everybody. Like, obviously, people are thinking for themselves. It's not like every single person. Like my mom chose to not go on the statin.
Sure.
But I do think that's the kind of place where I think a little more education, a little more self-empowerment, so that you can at least think about what they're asking you to do if they do want to prescribe you some type of medication, for example, and understanding what you're getting yourself into so that you can make the decision wisely, versus just being like, oh, well, my doctor said I needed to take this, so I just started taking it. It's like,
exactly. It's like if you are to become a person who takes ownership of your health and your body and seeks out the knowledge necessary to get yourself in good metabolic health, physical health, mobility, strength, nutrition. You have to do it on your own. Like it's just one of those pursuits where don't expect the medical industry as we know it to necessarily be there to like give you the right education you need, the right information you need. I think that's going to have to come from you just taking initiative and ownership over it and going after it, right? Otherwise, you can go down a rabbit hole. And I mean, I have a person that I'm working with. I'll leave names out. Not only was he prescribed Ozempic, he was 17% body fat, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
18% body fat. Not only was he prescribed Ozempic, the same doctor also prescribed him Anavar anabolic steroids. So at one point he was on both. He was on Ozempic, which is an appetite suppressant and for fat loss and weight loss in general, and an anabolic steroid. So it's not like these doctors don't exist out there that are just free will, like prescribe ridiculous things to people who do not need them.
Yeah, if you're at 17% body fat, you do not need.
Lift weights, strong.
Yeah, I mean, that's just.
It's like, to me, it should be illegal to prescribe like things like that to people who it's not a medical necessity.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the what one of the things is we're kind of shooting at, because like I mean I have another client that has had like crazy arthritis and took a medication that's like changed his life. And it's like a kind of like autoimmune regulator kind of thing, and it's made such a difference for him. So again, it's not like there's no value in prescriptions or no value in going to see your doctor for things, but I think that other situation that you just named there is pretty ridiculous. And it's just,
and the thing is like this guy, he didn't ask for this. He didn't know what a semaglutide was or what Anavar was. So it's not like he went in there saying like, hey, here's what I want.
I'm interested in this. Yes.
He didn't, like the doctor was just like, you should try. How do we try this?
And like, that's like, and like, why? And again, it goes into that conflict of interest of getting paid to prescribe things and
right.
do certain surgeries, and it just gets tricky.
It does. And so it's like, listen, if you're diabetic, then you need to seek medical attention and advice.
Absolutely.
If you are struggling to lose an extra 10 or 15 vanity pounds, and if you're truly being honest with yourself and self-reflective that you're not sleeping very well, you're drinking too much alcohol, you're eating irregularly, the food choices you're making aren't great, your protein levels are low, you're not exercising, you're lifting weights. So maybe there's a few things we can go after before we seek medical intervention.
Yes, right? for the 12 pounds, yeah.
Like, let's just maybe like have a little self-mastery and take care of some of the fundamentals around lifestyle, and then watch your hormones improve themselves. And that's a big thing too, is people are like, maybe I need to see my doctor because I think my hormones are wrong. I'm like, okay, well, how are you sleeping? Terribly.
Right, and that's
what kind of food
so
choices
important.
are you making? I eat like shit. Are you exercising? No. You drink
sick.
alcohol pretty much every day. So maybe it's hormones, maybe, but it also sounds like there might be a few things that you can control that might improve your hormones. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the most part, unless we have like a real diagnosed issue, your hormones are pretty reflective of lifestyle, right? They're
Absolutely.
kind of working in balance.
Especially sleep. I mean, endocrine regulation happens when you sleep. And so if you have poor sleep patterns, your endocrine system is dysregulated.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest ones. And so without question, you can affect your hormone levels. If you have like a thyroid condition, or you truly have something that's diagnosable like that, that's one thing. But I think generally people that just have like maybe a little lower testosterone, it's like, okay, there are absolutely things you can do to change that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I went in to see the doctor because I knew I had tendonitis in my knee. I did volleyball all last year. I was running in the sand, jumping. I was all of a sudden just like doing this multiple times a week.
Prancing and leaping.
Just twirling and
skipping to work.
And I started feeling it. And then like a month later, it was like full blown patellar tendonitis, jumper's knee, as they call it. Brutal to the point where like I was like, I got to see a doctor.
Something's got to give.
What I'm doing on my own isn't good enough.
Got it.
So I went in, saw this doctor. She was really cool, super down to earth. Kind of just went through all the basics, and she was like, "Well, what do you think it is?" I was like, if I had to self-diagnose, I'd say it feels like patellar tendonitis. She's like, "Okay, yep, definitely, that's what it is." And she's like, kind of like a little nonchalant about it. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but it's just kind of like, yeah. And also, you might have a little arthritis too, just because you're getting closer to 40 and you've been athletic your whole life. It wouldn't be uncommon if you had a little arthritis developing in your knee. And I was like, well, what should I do? She's like, yeah, nothing really. Just kind of like keep an eye on it. And if it gets worse, like, call me. And I actually respected that. I was like, okay, great. It would have been so easy for her to just prescribe me all this stuff and have me go do all these things.
Maybe get a cortisone shot. Or,
but she was super cool, kind of a younger generation. And she was just like, yeah, like nothing. I don't think there's any cause for concern. It's just tendonitis, man. You're going to have to just deal with it for a while until it goes away. Here's some stretches and some exercises. And guess what? The exercises were it was the most basic exercises you've ever seen in your life. Like really just like putting your leg over like a foam roller and just extending your knee. It was
right.
like stepping down off of a 12-inch step and back up. Like
yep.
the most rudimentary basic stuff, but a lot of people are hearing that for the first times. But I did them just because I wanted to be I wanted to be compliant. But what's funny is that, like, again, she was one of the better ones that actually just gave me exercises to do, and she just gave me,
which is great.
Like, yeah, just kind of like gave me some stretches and some. She's like, kind of like, you probably already know how to do these, but you know, I'm gonna give it to you anyways.
Yeah.
And it was cool to like see somebody just go with, you need to figure out how to take this on your own and not just default to like the getting wrapped up in the rabbit hole of diagnosis. And
it's even great that she gave you exercises, and that's like because fundamentally those would probably be very similar to what a PT would prescribe. It's very often the PT exercises that are given are very straightforward and very fundamental, which is not a bad thing. This is what it is.
Like the shoulder stretch where you just pull your arm across your chest and then just hold that for 10 seconds. You're like, really? That's it?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing?
But it's cool that she kind of did, you didn't have to go to the referral and go down that. Right. She actually gave you some things to do. So that's totally admirable.
She gave me the option. She's like, you can totally get referred out if you want, or you can just try this and call me and see how it feels.
Give it some time.
But to that point of what we were talking about earlier, these are not exercises that are, guarded and coveted and only like medical professionals have access to. This is the most basic stretching, the most basic YouTube beginner 5-minute yoga flow video that you can go and Google right now. It was stuff that anyone can do. And the point is like, man, I got to a point because of a very specific reason where I had tendonitis in my knee, but so many people who just have like a tweak or something can totally just probably do some of these stretches on their own and take care of 80-90% of their issues.
And that's the thing is like, you went to a doctor that obviously didn't, gave you the option to get referred out, but was just kind of like, this is the situation. But how many other doctors are there that are kind of on the other end of the spectrum? So it ranges, it's not like you can make a blanket statement about every white coat, but
for sure
I can think it's just just self-education. So more self-empowerment.
And so many of the issues that we're facing with metabolic disease being on the rise is a lifestyle and nutrition issue. And so I guess that's what's so perplexing about it. This is where, you can't help but wonder like who's supporting med school and what the agenda is here and like how much of a conflict of interest is there, because no one would deny how metabolic disease of some kind, whether it be diabetes or hypertension or high cholesterol, they're all, you can arrive at any one of those with the same road,
pretty much,
which is overeating, not moving enough, that kind of thing. So it's so fundamental of just what causes these issues. Yet it's, as the years progressed, I was reading that in 2004, 30% of medical schools had at least 25 hours of nutrition education. And then by 2023, only 19%. And it's almost like going in the wrong direction.
You're getting less and less prioritized.
Yeah. And yet metabolic disease is on the rise. And so it's like, we're almost creating a scenario where we're training doctors to only treat the symptoms of these metabolic diseases. Because obviously now, let's just be honest, like there's more money in that, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no money in telling someone to eat less food.
Right.
But there is money in giving them, diabetes medicine. Insulin's not cheap. Like, gastric bypass is tens of thousands of dollars that they can bill to insurance. Like there is statins and I mean, man, it's hard to, like, when you look at it for what it is, you kind of go, wait, what? Why is there not more intervention from the onset? And it's like, well, who's going to pay for that? It's almost like climate, right? Where it's cheaper there's more money to be made in creating industry around fixing the damages of climate change than there is to develop an industry to prevent it, right? So it's the same thing with like medical. There's more money after someone's already sick.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're sick?
You have something to fix? Okay,
right this way.
Come here, yeah.
Right? Who's your insurance company?
Right.
Versus, and that's mean. I'm not trying to say like doctors are necessarily doing that, but I think it's systemic. I think it's more than just the individual doctor in their field of study. It's systemic how they're being groomed and sort of brought through this medical training and education and industry to be the specialist that does the one thing that can, yes, they make a lot of money doing it, but then also the hospital and the whole industry profits as well from people already being sick.
Yes.
But if there aren't sick people, then
Yeah.
how is this $100 million hospital going to operate?
Right.
With police, right? If no one ever got a speeding ticket or a DUI,
Yeah.
like what would the city revenue look like if everyone just was a proper
If everybody
citizen?
behaved and made sure their parking meters were on point,
Right,
and
they
never
need people breaking the
moved
law
their
or
car
else-
every
yeah.
time the street cleaning happened. And
No street cleaning tickets.
Oh man, no.
No speeding tickets, no red lights. If everyone just was perfect, how would the city make money? It's like, I don't mean to go down all these rabbit holes, but
But it is an odd juxtaposition.
it's like we want to be like, no, but they told us, and then as citizens, we're groomed to just like idolize doctors. I said doctor, so they know everything, and they know so much. I'm not trying to diminish that, but it's crazy how it's kind of like all baked into like our society that like
Yep.
they're positioned here and we don't question what they say. If they prescribe us this, that's just what the doctor's orders are.
That's right.
Yet you kind of go, well, what if everyone was just healthy and no one had these issues? Then what would happen, right? How would they make money? So I don't know, man. I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but
No, I
like,
think, but there's truth to it all.
right. But
A little
yeah,
bag of and width with it, it's a little
Right.
bit of this, a little bit of that.
for sure.
I think the biggest thing is educate yourself. If you're in pain, there's probably some YouTube videos that you can watch.
If you break your leg, just watch the YouTube
Do
videos.
the YouTube
Walk it
videos.
off. You'll be fine.
Use your imagination to heal your bone faster. And I think just educate yourself on any type of prescription that a doctor is asking you to take, and just understand your body a little bit more. Empower yourself, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seek self-mastery. I mean, like some of the biggest learning lessons of my life were when I got hurt. When I tweaked my back doing exercises, I'm like, man, what happened? And then like you kind of go, oh, if I'm being honest, I was probably a little too aggressive with my training. I wasn't really stretching and doing any sort of recovery.
right.
I was just working out and then
Going home.
home,
Yeah.
or whatever. And then you realize that everything is sort of like brewing under the surface that we're not aware of in our body, right? Our next illness, our next injury, like it's already probably brewing. And then if we don't continue to seek awareness and pay attention to our body and pay attention to the signals that our body is giving us, then they can fester to the point to where they finally, boom, manifest, and all of a sudden you tweak.
Yep.
Right. But it's always something for me anecdotally, it's just always been one of the best learning experiences to like have to self-reflect, like what happened there? And then realize, okay, yeah, I tweaked my shoulder playing volleyball, quote unquote, but really my posture hasn't been great lately. I really haven't been doing any specific exercises for my shoulder. I haven't really been doing any stretches for my shoulder. And so the volleyball wasn't the problem. The volleyball just exposed an issue that was already there.
Yeah. It demanded something that
Yeah.
wasn't quite capable because of all the things predecessing it.
Totally. Well, cool, man.
Yeah.
There we go. That was fun. We just shit on a bunch of doctors and
Threw him right under the bus. Yeah.
just two dumb trainers just talking shit about doctors. Classy. We kept it classy.
Keep it classy.
Listen, I think the takeaway is, you trust your gut. Let pain be your guide. If you're fucking hurt and it really is bad, do what you gotta do. But
course.
if it's like this recurring nagging issue that it's like there's probably it's telling you that you need to take better care of yourself, and there's more preventative things we can do. So, they're amazing, but doctors are amazing for so many things. But I think that never underestimate the power of just reverse engineering your lifestyle and getting to the core and the root of these symptoms that you're experiencing, instead of trying to cover them up with a prescription that may or may not be valid at this point.
Absolutely. And it's the same like if you've gained some weight, same thing. Take a step back.
Get some Ozempic.
Get some
reassess.
Ozempic. Look at your life. I mean, I've been so grateful that doctors exist so many times and that they are accessible. But at the same time,
Yeah,
a little self-reflection goes a long way.
for sure. Y'all, that was episode 11 of Coach's Corner. We all see you next time. Peace out.